This week, machine learning. Let's see, the threat stream is a product from Anomaly that we'll cover in the threat intelligence space. Virtualization-based security, really awesome technology that we're going to do there. Compliance dashboards, virtual web browsers, and an open source project from a security vendor. In our feature interview for this episode, we interview Gabriel Gums from StealthBits. He is the VP of Product Strategy. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Practice field, I had to do that to the door, and then once the wind caught it, I flew outside the door.
I call that a programmer's workout.
Yes, that is a programmer's workout.
I was at RSA. I got out. I have seen things. I've seen horrible things.
In order to deliver the maximum degree of privacy, personal data must be protected without action from an individual. In fact, this requirement is defined in the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. What if you could reliably and efficiently build privacy into your information security programs by default? StealthBits Technologies provides solutions that allow data to be collected and used in a manner that achieves GDPR compliance. Privacy by design and by default is not just a GDPR requirement, it's the foundation of StealthBits Technologies. Visit stealthbits.com to learn more today. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. And improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial today by visiting Tenable.io. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome to this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. I'm your host, Paul Asadorian, and it is April 13th, 2017. This is episode 40. Helping me out with episode 40 directly to my right is Mr. Jeff Mann. Jeff, welcome to the show.
We are kind of snugly here.
It's very cozy. It's cozy.
It is
cozy.
It's cozy.
Yes, it's awesome. So we're going to first have an announcement because it is the 10th anniversary edition of Source Boston being held this April. Training sessions the 24th through the 25th. Conference talks 26th through the 27th, featuring awesome speakers from the security community and me. So I'm going to be talking about IoT.
You're not an awesome speaker, but you'll be there.
I'll be there speaking nonetheless. Events are going to take place in Boston at Courtyard Marriott downtown, and Security Weekly listeners get a $100 discount on either the training or conference passes when using the discount code SecurityWeekly. Visit sourceconference.com for more information. On to the enterprise security news for this week. Our first announcement is all about machine learning, because machine learning is important, and when you have a product in security, you, I think, are now required to say that you have machine learning. Whether you have it or not, it has to be in your materials, worked in somewhere. Like, we thought about having machine learning, or our software mimics machine learning, or we use artificial intelligence and some machine learning.
It's my favorite topic the last couple months, machine learning, since that's what I focused on out in Vegas at IBM Interconnect.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Artificial intelligence, machine learning.
Yeah, well, Watson is more, I think, artificial intelligence.
It's all variations of a theme.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a smart
We dug
search.
down into the details one time with a data scientist and talked about the differences. But, it's so Trend Micro basically has this announcement, and I'm really not impressed because really, I mean, we joke about it, but really they're just saying, yeah, our endpoint protection, it's got machine learning. So therefore you should buy it because machine learning.
Because we've added that to the marketing slides. But
That's what it sounds like.
they seem light on the detail of what the machine learning is
Actually, like what value does that give me that you've added machine learning? How does it make the product better? More importantly, how does it help solve my problems either better or faster?
And in theory, hint, if anybody from Trend Micro is listening, it should be adding value in terms of speed and automation and reducing false positives.
Yes.
Getting to the answers or getting to the information that you
That's a good point.
need to respond to more quickly and more efficiently. That is the goal of machine learning.
I mean, we also have to point out, I think, that they're behind the curve if they're just now announcing machine learning in their endpoint protection, because there's probably about 30 or 40 other vendors in the market space doing machine learning with their endpoint, actual machine learning with their.
Better late than never.
That's right. This is true. This is true. This also sounds more like a, in the lead sentence, they say it will enhance, has enhanced protection of small business endpoints. So it's interesting how they specifically aren't calling out enterprise endpoints, but they're calling out small business endpoints, which in that mid-market, the more automated and machine learning that you have, obviously the better, because there are fewer, if sometimes no, security staff for your small businesses or in the mid-market.
Yeah, someday the whole industry needs to tackle, and maybe we need to have a whole show featuring a discussion on the challenges when you're a company, when you're a vendor trying to sell either into the enterprise space or the small to mid-sized market. Two completely different markets, two different approaches. And like you said, the smaller companies, and sometimes the large companies too, they don't have the organizational structure that we all think and know that the companies have out there, because that's what all the marketing slicks say.
Right.
If they have dedicated people at all.
Correct.
Mental note, let's do that sometime.
Let's do that. We can do that. Anomaly, which is unfortunately a vendor I was not able to catch up with at the latest show. I meant to get over there. They are a threat intelligence platform provider, and I believe they play in similar markets such as Threat Connect or Threat Quotient in that light. They've announced an improved integration with Splunk, and they call it the ThreatStream Splunk app. So ThreatStream is their product in this space, and they have an app for Splunk, which is interesting because
Splunk
it has
a dashboard.
And it has a dashboard, which Jeff and I were just commenting before the show. At this point, all the dashboards look pretty much the same. I mean, I'm sure there's devils in the details, but they look the same, dude.
But you really have to read the small print to even see whose dashboard you're looking at.
Yes.
And this one doesn't click and expand, so it's actually readable.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
Another free tip.
Yeah, I don't understand the. Well, I mean, I do. The marketing, behind it is not very good. In that there's lots of screenshots of the dashboard, but I don't find it meaningful. And they actually say in the article, I won't bore you with the technical details. Like,
that's kind of what we want to see.
Yeah, it's so fun, but fine to have the
discriminant.
Fine to have the marketing announcement that should say, if you want more of the technical details, click here. Because we do want that. For me and a lot of us, the technical details help me not only understand how the product works, maybe what problems it solves, how it makes things better, but it also provides context to talk about it at a higher level. That's kind of how I analyzed. I mean, I'm sure people are similar.
And again, do they say, I didn't read the fine print because I can't.
It's
I'm
really
too old.
I can hardly see it.
Are they targeting enterprise or small to mid-size? Did you see that anywhere?
This is it seems more like an enterprise. ThreatStream is an enterprise product, to my knowledge. I'm not sure if they. Again, I wish I had caught up with them.
There's pie graphs. There's lots of pretty colors. So in theory, you can show this to your.
It says you can now understand if you're suffering a more serious targeted attack from known adversaries to help you better prioritize matches.
And presumably green is good, and I mean they don't really have red. It's
like
a orange,
like a dark orange. Yeah.
Oh well.
Anyway,
devil's in the details, which
certainly, and that's one reason why I do like to catch up with vendors at the show, so I can ask people on the show floor, hey, what does your product do? And that's met with mixed success.
Right.
As you well know, Jeff.
Well, and so it's a ThreatStream Splunk app, so presumably there's some of their foo mixed with Splunk, and it's not easy to see where one starts and where the other ends, or where they merge or converge.
Well, and that's interesting. We've talked about on the show in the past how even in different like spaces within security, everyone's trying to be like the dashboard that you go to. And then at a larger scale, the IT management like ServiceNow and like that's going to become the operations dashboard. And it's going to include security.
Right.
Some people are having some success with that. When you're looking at a dashboard for a SOC analyst, for example, there's this huge battle, big contention between all the different vendors, like who's going to be the dashboard.
Right.
Now, today, I think we have a dashboard for vulnerability data.
Yep.
We have got dashboards for threat intelligence.
Right.
We've got dashboards for events that come from SIM and other things. We may have a separate dashboard for endpoints and endpoint protection. And all these have merged in like different ways, but I haven't seen Threat Connect. Some of the threat intelligence vendors have done a better job, I think, of trying to consolidate all of that. Certainly, Threat Connect has, I think, the most and the best integrations that would let you pull from. I mean, they partner, integrations with the 3 big vulnerability scanners, integrations with the SIM technology and other technologies as well. Right. So that's one that I like to recommend if people want to get that lens. I think they're the closest. A lot of the other ones, like I said, are just like in between endpoint and SIM. And then you get you can go to either one and get the dashboard because they integrate with each other. So it's really interesting to see that play out in the market today.
But I think too, these dashboards, they tend to show a point in time. Sometimes there's some trending analysis, but I think especially if you're starting to fold in different technologies or different data feeds, maybe if you will, some way to portray the extra value that you've just gotten because you've added a different layer of data or added a different input, so that you can kind of see the before and after. Or
I like that. That's actually a good strategy.
That's what I would look for, and I think that's what, especially if you're trying to sell this to a company, you want to be able to show what the added value is, to be able to present that before after type of thing.
And as you well know, with dashboards and reports, everyone wants something different.
Yep.
And that's
the colors are off here and the font.
Exactly.
It usually starts with that.
It usually starts with that.
Who cares?
And then they say,
about
I want to see the data. I want to see this piece and that. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't. We have to go build a custom dashboard for you. And that's usually how dashboards go. Yep. We should do a whole segment on dashboards.
We should. Second mental note.
Yes. What else we got here? Bromium. So there's actually 2 different virtual-based security companies that had product announcements this week. Have you heard of Bromium before?
I have heard of Bromium, yes.
So that's the isolation and virtualization technology. It's actually really good. And John's usually my indicator for some of those things, because John will say yes when either John himself or someone on his team, collectively they did a pen test, and they're like, it was a problem for us. And that's
a good sign.
That's a good sign, right?
Yep.
So Bromium is definitely one of those technologies. They've got a host of new features that they came out with. IOC hunting, detailed threat analysis, looks like some operational things as well, supporting Windows and Secure Boot, a unified installer. They're also, which is very timely, as there was just a very bad vulnerability and associated exploit in the wild for Microsoft Word. I don't know if you heard about it. Yeah.
Yep.
And so they've got Files Office and Office Protected View are still opened in a micro VM, invisible to the end user. Any embedded malicious binaries will still be identified in full malware manifest collected and behavior analyzed. So the fact that they can help protect your Office documents, I would hope they're going to have. If I were Bromium, I'd recommend a webcast or some kind of content going, hey, you hate to be the ambulance chaser, but it sounds like they really do help with this particular problem.
Well, and it's not unheard of. It's happened several times in the history of the industry where companies have kind of made their name on the fact that they found something, discovered something that nobody else had.
And it's interesting how, along in that light, you recognize that you have a problem in your organization. And what I'm thinking of, based on what you just said, actually, is like there's different levels of that problem. And when there's a major event, like that's creeping up the severity of that problem.
Right.
Because most of us know, if you're defending an organization, you know that certain percentage of your users are going to get an email with a malicious Office document, let's say, and they're going to open it. And then they're even going to click on stuff after that, and they're going to get malware on their systems. And you know that today. But the like level of risk and severity of those attacks before this Office thing, you may be like, yeah, I know that's a problem, but I don't know if I need to go like seek out a whole new solution for it or do anything above and beyond what I'm already doing today.
Right.
The big incident comes out, or the big vulnerability comes out, and you research it, or you listen to these shows and read blogs, and you're like, well, that's really bad. This now means I need to probably do something more in this area. And the vendor can still solve the same problem, but it's of a higher priority for the organization.
But the challenge then is also there's bad and then there's really bad. And I don't think there's a universal agreement on
what,
you know, what's bad to the point of we need to take action on this. And, you know, and typically it's been, you know, speaking from the vulnerability side of things, it's, you know, that there's a known exploit in the wild,
Right.
and you know, the severity or the the complexity of how that the vulnerability can actually be exploited.
Or we knew all that, and the driver was a C-level executive is the one that clicked the link, the attachment.
Right.
And now it's a really big deal because that C-level executive is without their computer or without access to something. And that executive's asking, well, like, what are we doing to protect this?
Right.
And saying, hey, you know, I got this email from Bromium that said they have Office Protected View. And that's a lot of times how products get into an organization, which isn't necessarily, that's like the reverse of the ambulance chasing, right?
Right.
In the other, from the other side. So, yeah, do check out Bromium. Lots of new features. I get excited when vendors document their new features, and it's a big update. It means there's new things to talk about, new things to evaluate, potentially new ways to solve a problem.
And there's details, and it's well organized.
Yes, and I do applaud the details here. I can read it and actually understand, like blacklisting and automatic blocking, automated enterprise-wide IOC detection, stop lateral movement. Well, maybe that's not great in configurable blacklist. But like I understand what they're talking about. Right. There's some marketing speak in there, but the ability to quarantine files, like that's all speaking to their abilities. So bravo, Bromium, for putting that together.
Nice alliteration.
Yes. So
you know what that means, right?
No, I don't. I'm just pretending. You know that, Jeff. I'm
Bravo,
just really good.
Bromium. Words that sound alike.
So you mean it rhymes?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
You have to speak in layman's terms to me, Jeff. You got to remember this now.
You're rapping, Paul.
Nobody wants that.
No,
believe me.
Move on.
Twistlock. Hey, you're like the PCI compliance.
Yes.
Person.
Is there anything else?
There are. None are the man, literally, that I know of.
Right.
Maybe there are. But yeah, Twistlock makes compliance dashboards and compliance solutions. They are counting down to the release of Twistlock 2.0 and highlighting some of the new functionality. They now have their native support for Docker, CIS benchmarks, HIPAA, and PCI templates. They're able to enforce that compliance. They're expanding upon that and providing a centralized compliance dashboard. Ooh.
And
that looks just like all of the other dashboards that we've seen. And I don't mean to knock Twist. I mean, I have not used Twistlock. I've heard good things about them, which I recognize them and put them in here today. But yeah, this is
the really tricky part, since we recently worked for a vulnerability.
Well, we talked about dashboards a lot.
Management vendor. We talked about dashboards a lot, and what I always tried to emphasize was the sort of the reverse nature of a compliance dashboard, because any type of company that's trying to show, look at all the different things we find, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing all these dashboards with statistics. We've seen 10,000 of this and another 500 of these things, and everything's incredibly bad, which is what we always wanted to emphasize. Look at all the vulnerabilities we find. The flip side, though, is if you're doing a compliance dashboard where you're trying to monitor ongoing compliance, whatever it is, you kind of really want to see things all green and rosy and happy with the occasional hiccups and one-offs and things that are falling through the cracks. So it's kind of a different mindset. It's tricky. But, I always used to tell our former employer, if I was looking at that dashboard and seeing all that kind of stuff wrong, not only would I be failing you on whatever you were showing me, I'd be failing you on probably a half dozen other things, because that clearly means you're not meeting that requirement, that requirement, that requirement. Because if it's that bad, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, and I agree. And kind of the flip side of that is you're really never going to see a dashboard that tracks compliance or vulnerabilities in this example that's always green all the time. Right. Because
which is realistic, and I get that.
But you should see what you should look for as an analyst, or if you're assessing the compliance status of an organization, are those dips, right? So, we were compliant,
or
and
spikes.
Then we dropped out at spikes, right?
How about anomalies?
Well, it's really a trend, right? At this point in time, hey, there weren't a lot of vulnerabilities, and there weren't a lot of, we're out of compliance, but, then we were. But how quickly they recover from that to get back up to the green is more of the measurement, in my mind, in a dashboard that's able to trend that over time. And I think it should be tailored towards executives and management and C-levels to say, look, yes, but over time, we have either gotten more compliant or less vulnerable. And by the way, over time, we've decreased those gaps, right? So we've gotten better at fixing stuff faster.
So, and that underscores probably the most important part about a compliance dashboard is it's not showing green all the time. It's not showing that you're compliant. And it's not really, if you find a problem with the dashboard, fixing it. It is giving you an indication of, and hopefully this ties back to a process, whether it's automated or manual. Something that's not working right, we need to go improve on something. So, if it discovers systems that you didn't know about it, there's something wrong with the way you're deploying systems.
Yes, your asset management.
Isn't right. If vulnerabilities are showing up that are older than 30, 60, 90 days, whatever.
Your patch process
process is not working. And maybe it's isolated to a particular network segment, maybe
particular group, a subsidiary
group. Hopefully it points you to the area where you can show those signs of improvement. You've got to work on your processes like you were describing.
This next story, I think, is probably one of, at least this week, maybe in the past couple of weeks, the greatest announcement for a particular company in terms of capability. And the way I've read it, and the company is Authenticate, with the number 8. They have a virtual web browser technology, which runs a secure web browser. It's based on Firefox, but it's I don't know how else you describe a secure web browser. They didn't list the technical details as to actually how they're securing the browser technology.
You say Firefox, I say Mozilla.
Mozilla, yes. What did I say? What did it say in the thing? I read what it said in the... Maybe it said Mozilla Firefox in the thing. And I just picked one of those words. It did say Mozilla Firefox.
There you go.
But prior to this update... Now, let's take for granted this technology works in some way to help your browsing be more secure, right? Whatever that means. Prior to the new update, users had to click the Silo browser icon on the desktop. Now, users are trained when they want to do web browsing, they click the Mozilla Firefox icon. They click the Google Chrome icon. And my guess is that feedback from customers and security teams was, well, people aren't really using it because they got to remember to click on it. So what they did was they integrated with the web proxy services, and now anyone basically pointing at the web proxy gets the benefit of this web browser. And just how they did it is really cool. I'm trying to get the exact phrase. So they don't return JSON. Instead of returning a JSON instruction that opens Silo, they return an encapsulated browser session. It's actually a JavaScript encapsulation of their proprietary protocol for secure browsing.
Didn't we used to call this a wrapper?
Yeah, it's a wrapper.
It's a wrapper.
Yeah. Which, I mean, for Authenticate, that's a huge product announcement. That's a huge step in the, I think, for their sales, provided their product actually works. But that's a huge step in the right direction. And I think it's really cool how they're able to encapsulate all that in JavaScript and tie it into the web proxy. That's pretty awesome.
And it's transparent to the user. They're just happy.
They click their browser,
whatever they're doing, and it's all happening. So the trick will be, how can a clever user that figures out that for some reason it's slowing them down or whatever, which hopefully it doesn't, how do they get around it? Are there workarounds or shortcuts that can be taken? Because somebody will figure it out.
Yeah, one of my first jobs in security, we heavily proxied all of our users, both to, at that time, save internet bandwidth, which probably isn't as much of a driver. I mean, we're talking like 2001, 2002, or actually even before that time frame. So bandwidth was premium.
Yep.
And so we would cache it, right? That was one. But also for security, we could look at various things. We could restrict various calls and websites and that kind of thing. And since the main thing was we were restricting websites, there were websites like pornography that people wanted to get to.
Right.
And so we would be detecting all of their creative ways around that proxy. Now, at the time, there were ways around it because we were, running open source, FreeBSD, using an open source proxy server, which escapes me. People are yelling it in their cars, but an open source proxy server to do that. So, yeah, I mean, you firewall and you do various things like that, and it's problematic. I think today that problem's a lot easier to solve.
I have an even more scary, one of my favorite war stories is many years ago I had a customer that had implemented a product from Secure Shell called Tectia. And it was similar to this. Yeah. Basically, people that were resistant to not using Telnet and they feared change, you would run Tectia. And
it was Squid. Sorry, it was
they would telnet, but the server that they were telnetting to, if it was running Tectia and they were a Tectia client, it would be just transparently
do it in the background.
Shift it over to Secure Shell.
Yeah.
The problem was on the server, it was still running the telnet daemon, and I had a customer that had set it up for their admins to Telnet or Secure Shell to basically a jump server, a utility server at thousands of retail locations. It was a retailer, but they'd set it up with the thousands of locations being the server with just a few of their clients. I said, so if you're at the store, you still got all these servers running the Telnet daemon.
That anyone can.
What if you just Telnet to it if you're not running the client? It worked, and it took me 4 hours to explain to their head security guy that they'd implemented it effectively backwards. It worked for him,
right?
But it still left this huge gaping hole. And the Telnet was still running and still worked. And if you just didn't happen to be running the Tectia client,
it would just connect over Telnet.
All the vulnerabilities were there. All the exploitation possibilities were there.
Yep. It was Squid. Squid was the web proxy.
Gotcha.
That I used before. Yeah.
I remember Squid.
Yeah. Our last story is kind of it's kind of interesting. I'm not too familiar with this company. They make hardware encryption management systems.
Okay.
They do that for Docker. They do that for cloud encryption gateways.
So HSMs.
Exactly. Okay. HSMs. Yep. They've open sourced some of their key management software, from what I understand, or portions of their software that allow you to do encryption.
Right.
Now, you still need the hardware, but they were kind of like, rah, 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 open source. I'm like, it's great, you still need the hardware. They did provide you with hardware emulation, a software encryption module, security module, I think they called it, and so you could test it in software without using their hardware appliance. So that was interesting. There's always a trend that we've seen where select companies will do some kind of open source project as a marketing effort, essentially, give something away, get people familiar with the company and their technology, and use. I mean, we're doing that.
We used to call that beta testing.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we do that at Offensive Countermeasures, and there are stories of hundreds of companies and how their different strategies to releasing something open source have been successful, not successful at various points in time. I thought this was interesting because their hardware. They make hardware,
right?
But they're open sourcing some of their software. But we're talking about them, so I guess their marketing efforts are.
Yeah, I actually like the idea because, my DoD background as a cryptographer, we were designing systems based on the premise that the bad guy, the adversary, knew everything about the system.
Right.
They'd bought one, they'd torn it apart, reverse engineered it. They had all the instruction manuals. They had copies or... in those days it was mostly hardware, and you still had to design a secure system, even though everything was known about it. But in my commercial career, the last 20 years ago, anytime I'd come across an encrypted solution and I'd ask the details, and companies more often than not would say, "Well, it's proprietary." I'm like, So I want to know the details.
Right.
There's a basic cryptographic principle that you got to assume that the bad guy knows everything about it and still make it secure. And anytime they'd say, sorry, proprietary, that's kind of a red flag for me.
Red flag.
It may be great, but how do you know?
Right.
So I like the idea that they're open source about it. If somebody there has got this principle of put it all out there and still make it secure, then I think they're on the right track just at face value. And hopefully if there's a problem, somebody will discover it and they'll
hopefully they report it and not keep it to themselves. That's the danger. So that rounds out our enterprise security news for today. Unless, Jeff, you had anything else you wanted to talk about in the product vendor space world?
No, I'm good.
We'll be at B-Sides Boston this weekend.
We are. I'm looking forward to that.
We'll be there just Saturday.
Yep.
But I'm looking forward to that.
And Jack Daniel will be there as well.
Jack Daniel will be there as well.
I believe the afternoon keynote, if I recall.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
We'll have a Security Weekly party there.
That's right. We'll see everyone next time on Enterprise Security Weekly.